Hello, welcome. Today we're going to paint this really simple, easy flower. Well, technically half a flower. And it's going to be with transparent petals, all layered petals. And it's going to be really easy and simple for you. So let's get on with it. I've got my palette here, so I'm going to show you the colours that I'm mixing. So I've got lemon yellow, and you can choose another colour. I will leave all the names in the description box of what colours I use, but feel free to use whatever colour you would like. And I'm also using a Holbein Lilac as well. I don't use Holbein very much, so that's why I wanted to try experimenting with these as well. The main thing is though is to keep the petals nice and watery. I'm going to start with the pollen. I've got my Baohong sketchbook. It's 100% cotton paper and it's cold press. Again, feel free to use what you have. I've always said in all my videos, you don't have to go out and buy specific materials. Just use what you have. The results might be slightly different to what you see here. Even if I was to repeat the process of what I'm doing here, the results will still be different. I always find it really hard to produce exactly the same painting over again and again. I'm just starting with quite a small brush, and I'm just popping down the pollen or the center of the flower. If you've been here before, you'll have seen some previous tutorials that I've done very similar. If you haven't been here before, I will pop them into the description box so that you can have a look at those if you would like. But we'll focus on this, and all I'm doing is it's like a semicircle. Keep the whites, keep it nice and watery. The weather here in the UK is actually quite hot at the moment as I paint this, so I am working quite quickly, but I'm adding lots of water. I haven't got the water in the shot here, but I am using quite a lot of water. I'm switching to a nice big fat brush, size 12, silver black velvet, and I'm just mixing up the lilac. Well, it's already mixed up, but I'm just adding it to the brush. Here, I'll show you here. And if you haven't got this particular brush, you can use a larger brush. You can use a smaller brush. It just might be a bit tricky to get the exact size of the petal. All I'm going to do is I want some of the yellow to go into the petal. So I'm just going to pop the brush down and create the petal like this. There's not a lot of pigment in there at all. It is a lot of water. In fact, I've probably got a bit too much water. This brush holds a lot of water. If that happens, wipe your brush or dab it on a towel or cloth, and then just absorb the water like this into your brush, and then just create your petal like this. Do the same thing. I want some of the yellow to go and flow into the petal. So I'm just going to move the center that I've just done there and have that flowing in a bit. And can you see how that's flowing really nicely? It's because of the water. This is a Baohong sketchbook, and the paper is actually really quite thick, and it does hold a lot of water. I'm just going to move a bit more of that yellow into the petal, and it just creates this really nice gradient effect. It's just really lovely, and the end results will be so nice as well. Notice how I'm not touching the petals next to another petal. So it's really important you do this to get this layered or transparent look. So when you create each petal, leave a white space in between each one, and you'll see why in a moment. I'm grabbing some more yellow, and I'm just adding a bit more yellow to this third petal. So that flows into that petal a bit more. Then you must wait for it to dry. That's the important bit. If you don't wait for the petals to dry, you won't get the layered effect. the paints and the water will all sort of merge into one. So it is really important you let each layer dry. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do the next layer. And first of all, I'm just adding exactly the same. I'm repeating the process. I'm adding in the pollen, the yellow, and I've gone slightly darker. So I've taken a darker yellow and I'm adding that to the lemon yellow just to make it a touch darker. I'm adding a bit more Holbein Lilac, and I'm still keeping it quite watery, but I'm adding a bit more pigment to the water this time to get that layered or transparent effect. And then we're going to do the petals in between where we left the white, like so. Exactly the same thing, create your petals exactly the same way. We're not touching the petal that we've just created. We are making a brand new petal in between the two petals that have dried. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes it's easier to show you rather than try and explain it. So hopefully you can follow along. The Holbein Lilac and the Shinhan PWC yellows have all actually blended really nicely on the paper. It's got like an orangey glow effect on there as well. And the reason why I'm showing you these particular layered transparent petals is some people still find it really tricky to get this effect. And the most important thing is to keep it really light and watery, and to make sure you wait for each layer to dry. You can have as many layers as you would like. The most important thing though is that you make sure you wait for each layer to dry. I'm just going round the edges just to define the petals a bit more and individualize them so that you can see that they are separate petals. I'm just adding a couple of petals to the edge of the paper as well. I am focusing on flowers, but if you are interested in painting leaves or other 5-minute flowers, if you want to do them, paint them a bit quicker, I will leave everything in the description box for you so that you can have a look at those. Whilst the paint is still a touch bit wet, I'm going to go in with a darker purple colour, and this is a Shinhan Violet colour that I'm using. I'm just going to drop a little bit into the edges of the petal, and it just defines the petals a bit more and starts to create that separate layered effect that I've been going on about. And I'm just blending them in. Be light and delicate, light touches just on the edges. Use the tippy pointy bit of the brush and then let that dry again. It's really important, you must let that dry. Once that's dried, I'm switching over to a smaller silver black velvet brush. It's a size 8 and this one's got a fine point as well. I'm still going in with the orangey, yellowy, slightly darker. Again, it's the same process. We're just going to add in a few little bits to make the centre a bit more darker. We're still keeping it watery, but not as watery as before. We're going to change the consistency a little bit and start adding a bit more pigment in as well. So I'm just getting that ready. Still using Holbein, and this time we're just going to make slightly smaller petals. And then it gives the effect of there being sort of the centre pollen, and then some more petals, and then another layer of petals, and then another layer of petals. Does that make sense? And look how lovely that is all coming together. Does that make sense now? Why we keep the whites, why we keep the transparency of the petals, and why we need to use water to start off with, quite a bit of water, to keep the colours nice and light as you build up the layers. I hope that's making sense, and I'm hoping your picture, your painting has come out just as good as this as well. And I'm just going to go in with a bit more of the violet Shinhan colour, and I'm just going to drop a bit into the edges and make the petals show a bit more, define a bit more. Once you've got the base layers down, you can then add the details right at the end. With watercolours, it is best to do the details at the end. And then once you've dropped in a few edges with a bit of the darker purple, rinse your brush, and then with the water only in your brush, just blend the edges out a bit more, like so. And you don't need to do that with all the petals, just do it with a couple of them, just to separate them a bit more. And all I'm doing here is dropping a bit more colour onto the wet paper, onto the wet petal, and that's just sort of blooming a tiny bit, and then you can just blend that out a bit more. Just little drops, don't do too much. If you add in too much, it'll just bloom out a bit too much, and then you may lose the effect. It's not the end of the world if that does happen. You can just dab it or use your brush. And then all I'm doing, I've got a slightly different brush, and it's an Escoda brush size 8, because I've got a bit more control with that, with the tippy pointy bit again. I can create these little lines or veins within the petals. Practice that first if you're not comfortable with doing that. I've been practicing that loads and loads, and it's still not 100% right. In fact, I'm just going to grab a bit more water into my brush, and I'm just going to blend this bit out because I feel like it just went a bit too bold. I'm just working on the final petals, just adding a few little bits to the edges just to separate them a bit more as well. I'm just going to grab a little bit of green just to add to the centre of the flower, just to give it a bit more final details, if you like. And then that is going to be it. That is all done. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll hope you join me in the next video where I will paint the background. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how you got on, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.